Welcome to another deep dive. Let's start today by talking directly to you, the listener. Have you ever experienced that classic nightmare scenario of language learning?
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. You practice asking this incredibly simple question in your head for like 10 minutes while waiting for a meeting to start.
You've got the vocabulary locked.
Exactly. The verb is conjugated perfectly, but the absolute second your colleague actually looks at you and asks for your input, your brain just completely unplugs.
Just flat lines.
You freeze, you stumble over your words, and you walk away with this burning sense of frustration, just wondering why those hundreds of hours you spent studying feel entirely wasted. It is a deeply universal pain point for adult learners who are just trying to level up their careers.
That paralysis at the point of performance, that is the single biggest indicator that the translation mechanism between studying a language and actually acquiring it is broken.
Broken how?
Well, people treat language like a math formula they can just memorize, rather than what it actually is, which is a biological environment they need to adapt to.
Yeah.
The effort is absolutely there, but the application is fundamentally misaligned with how the adult brain processes real-time communication.
And that misalignment is exactly why we are pulling apart today's source material. We are looking at an incredibly practical roadmap that makes a massive, almost audacious promise.
Mastering English fluency in just 90 days.
90 days. Our mission for this deep dive is to deconstruct this framework completely. We want to show you how to ditch those old, frustrating methods that leave you tongue-tied, and instead, build a system that bypasses the conscious translation trap entirely.
And, crucially, fits seamlessly into an already overloaded professional schedule.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because this whole 90-day plan hinges on one massive shift in how we approach learning, and it involves throwing out the very thing we were always taught to focus on first.
The roadmap demands a complete strategic pivot away from grammar.
Away from grammar. Which sounds crazy to anyone who took a high school language class.
It does, but it argues that starting with grammar rules creates a cognitive bottleneck. Think about it. When you learn the rules first, you're training your brain to run this conscious analytical check on every single sentence before you speak.
Like a mental checklist.
Exactly. But that algorithm is simply too slow for the speed of natural human conversation. By the time you've, verified the past perfect continuous tense in your head, the conversation has completely moved on.
And you are left in that frozen state we just talked about.
Precisely.
But wait, dropping grammar entirely, if I just string random words together without any structural foundation, aren't I risking locking in terrible habits?
That's the common fear, yeah.
Because, how does this framework prevent you from just sounding like a caveman forever? It feels really counterintuitive to ignore the rules of the game you are trying to play.
It feels counterintuitive because traditional schooling conditioned us to learn that way. But natural language acquisition relies on pattern recognition, not rule memorization.
Pattern recognition.
Right. Think about a child learning their native tongue. They don't sit down with a textbook to study sentence diagramming before they ask for a snack.
No, they just yell for juice.
Exactly. They are immersed, they absorb, because the brain is this extraordinary prediction machine. It figures out what sounds right based on massive amounts of contextual input.
Okay, I see.
When you prioritize immersion, you're giving your adult brain the raw data it needs to run that exact same biological process.
So you learn what sounds correct because you've heard it 1,000 times in a specific context, rather than because you memorized some isolated formula on a flashcard.
What's fascinating here is a specific piece of evidence from the source material that actually quantifies this effect.
Oh, I love the data on this.
Yeah, language studies show that surrounding yourself with English true contextual immersion accelerates retention fourfold compared to isolated rule memorization.
4 times the retention. That is huge.
It is. The cognitive mechanism behind this is that context provides emotional and visual anchors.
Anchors.
Right. So when you learn a word while watching a really tense news broadcast or while you're navigating a complex work email, your brain subconsciously embeds that language into a web of association.
Sticky.
Exactly. Rote memorization in a vacuum simply cannot achieve that kind of deep neural networking.
4-fold retention is a staggering metric. If you only have 30 minutes a day to dedicate to this, you absolutely must use the method that yields a 400% return on your time investment.
Without a doubt.
So how do we actually operationalize this? The roadmap breaks this down into phases, starting with the first 4 weeks, where the mandate is to build a foundation using vocabulary rather than syntax.
Because words are the fundamental building blocks of meaning. If you have the precise vocabulary, you can convey complex professional or personal needs, even if the grammatical wrapper is completely messy.
Right. If I say server crash delayed report, you know exactly what I mean, even if the grammar isn't perfect.
Exactly. So the framework suggests a daily quota, noting 20 new words every single day for the first 2 weeks.
But the critical distinction here is where you source these words, right? You don't just download a random frequency list from the internet.
No, absolutely not. You pull them directly from your immediate daily environment.
The mapping has to be relevant to your actual life. Instead of learning basic isolated nouns like apple or dog, you map the vocabulary to your adult routines.
Right, so if you're sitting at your desk, you aren't just looking at a window or a chair.
You're mapping words like quarterly report or spreadsheet, client deliverables, or even the specific jargon of your morning subway commute. You are taking the complex reality you already navigate perfectly in your native tongue and simply placing English labels over it.
Then you immediately activate those foundational words by linking them to actions.
Yes.
You take client deliverables and you attach a simple state of being to it. The client deliverables are delayed.
Okay, simple enough.
And you build from there. The client deliverables are delayed because the server is down.
Oh, I see.
You're gradually escalating the complexity of the thought without ever opening a grammar workbook. You are letting the narrative dictate the structure.
20 highly relevant words a day feels rigorous, but achievable. To make those words actually stick, though, the roadmap introduces this concept of passive absorption.
Strategy 2.
Right. The goal is to fundamentally alter your environment so your brain is essentially tricked into operating as if it's suddenly relocated to an English-speaking country.
Passive absorption integrates the target language into the background radiation of your daily life. And the best part is, it requires 0 extra hours in your day, which is vital for busy professionals.
So how do we do that?
The primary mechanism is media switching. You audit your current media diet, and you just flip the language switch.
So if your morning routine involves watching financial news, you pivot to international English broadcasts covering those exact same global markets.
Precisely. Because you already understand the underlying context of the global markets or the political events being discussed.
Your brain isn't struggling to grasp the concept itself.
Right, it's only working to map the new English vocabulary onto a framework you already comprehend. That dramatically lowers the barrier to entry.
And commutes. Commutes are the perfect hidden pockets of time for this. Instead of zoning out to music, you pipe in English audio.
Find long-form interviews or industry-specific podcasts that genuinely interest you. The intellectual engagement with the topic helps carry your attention through the linguistic friction.
You are learning the language as a byproduct of consuming interesting content. Now, the source does offer a pragmatic concession here for people who find native speed financial news or complex podcasts just way too intimidating on day one.
Which is very common.
Yeah. It permits the use of dubbed content initially. Watching a familiar show dubbed in English allows you to lean on the visual context to decode the audio.
But there's a catch.
Right. The source puts a hard deadline on this. You must transition to original, non-dubbed audio within 3 weeks. You cannot permanently rely on the training wheels.
That 3-week timeline is a psychological forcing function. It provides a brief grace period to adjust to the cadence, the rhythm, and the phonetic inventory of the language.
But then it pushes you.
It pushes you into the deep end of authentic immersion before you plateau, because authentic audio contains the slang, the overlapping speech, and the natural pacing that dubbed content artificially sanitizes.
So you've spent 3 weeks soaking up all this English audio. Your brain is swimming in the cadence and the vocabulary, but the real friction, the point where most learners quit, happens the moment you actually have to open your mouth and produce a sound.
Going from input to output.
Bridging that gap between absorbing input and generating output is the next major phase of the 90-day plan.
And active input is the transitional step here. You don't just jump from passive listening straight into public speaking. That's a recipe for panic.
Okay.
You have to internalize the patterns deliberately.
Just strategy 3.
Right. The framework advises taking those educational podcasts you've been listening to, pausing them after key phrases, and shadowing the speaker.
Shadowing, meaning repeating what they just said.
Yes. You repeat the lines out loud, attempting to perfectly mimic the intonation and rhythm. You are simultaneously training your auditory processing and your vocal apparatus.
The roadmap also weaves reading into this transitional phase, but again with a very specific active methodology. It recommends consuming texts that sit just slightly above your current comfort level, actively mining them for unfamiliar terms to feed back into that daily 20-word quota.
Combining the modalities is where the real acceleration happens. The source suggests reading a transcript or an article while simultaneously listening to the native audio track for just 15 minutes a day.
So you're hitting two senses at once.
Exactly. Seeing the spelling of a complex word while simultaneously hearing the exact native pronunciation binds the visual and auditory data together in your brain. It essentially eliminates the guesswork of English pronunciation rules.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the roadmap's ultimate solution to that paralyzing hesitation of speaking isn't to immediately go out and find a native conversation partner.
No, not at all.
It demands that you start having intense, continuous monologues with yourself.
Strategy 4. The self-monologue is arguably the most powerful tool in the framework for overcoming the psychological barrier of output.
Because no one else is there.
Exactly. You remove the social pressure entirely. A routine might involve narrating your physical actions as you move through your house, or, more practically, articulating your thought process as you draft an email or prepare your lunch.
Okay, I have to push back a little here. Narrating my lunch preparation out loud in an empty kitchen feels objectively ridiculous. I am now spreading the mayonnaise. Doesn't that just breed a massive sense of awkwardness? How does talking to an empty room prepare you for the chaotic dynamics of a real boardroom or a social event?
It feels ridiculous initially, yes, but you are isolating the mechanical act of speaking from the social anxiety of being judged.
Okay, break that down for me.
When you speak a new language, your mouth, your tongue, and your vocal cords are literally being asked to perform unfamiliar gymnastics. The self-monologue builds vocal muscle memory.
Ah, muscle memory.
Right. So by the time you are in that boardroom, the physical act of forming the words is already automated. That allows your brain to focus entirely on the content of the conversation rather than the mechanics of pronunciation.
That makes a lot of sense. And the source takes this a step further into actual role-play scenarios. You aren't just narrating your actions, you are staging conversations. You practice explaining a complex project delay to a phantom boss, or you pitch a new idea to an imaginary client.
And the critical instruction here is to perform these role plays in front of a mirror.
The mirror. Yeah. Why is that so important?
Visual feedback fundamentally changes cognitive processing. When you watch yourself speak, you are monitoring your articulation, your microexpressions, and your body language, all of which carry massive amounts of communicative weight.
You're seeing what the other person will see.
Exactly. Practicing in the mirror forces you to confront and correct the awkwardness in a completely safe, controlled environment. The milestone is to utilize this self-practice for about 4 weeks, until the physical production of the language feels entirely mundane.
So you spend a month broadcasting your life to the mirror, building that vocal muscle memory, and stripping away the performance anxiety. But output isn't strictly verbal. The framework insists on cementing all of this spoken knowledge through daily writing.
Strategy 5.
Which seems like an odd detour if the ultimate goal is conversational fluency. Why write?
Writing is the cognitive slowdown that conversational fluency desperately needs. Speech is ephemeral. It vanishes the second you say it, which makes it very difficult to analyze your own structural mistakes.
You can't rewind your own mouth in real time.
Exactly. Documenting your thoughts forces you to slow down and consciously organize the grammar and vocabulary you've been naturally absorbing through immersion. It allows you to systematically expand your ideas in a way that the rapid-fire nature of real-time speech simply does not permit.
So how do you start?
You start small. The roadmap suggests a daily journaling habit, beginning with a single, highly descriptive sentence about your day. Something like, today, the cross-functional meeting was derailed by a software glitch.
Just one sentence.
Just one. But over the weeks, you deliberately expand that single sentence into a cohesive paragraph. You add nuance, transitional phrases, and deeper context. You are forcing your brain to recall the vocabulary you sourced from your environment and arrange it logically.
The psychological benefit of this writing habit is the built-in visual feedback loop. When you speak, you don't leave a tangible record of your progress. But when you flip back through a journal after 45 days, you can visibly track your evolution.
It's undeniable proof.
You see the sentences lengthening, the vocabulary becoming increasingly sophisticated, and the structural errors vanishing. That visual proof of competence is a massive defense against the inevitable slumps in motivation.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, sustaining motivation over a 90-day arc is the true underlying challenge of this entire endeavor. The secret to preventing stagnation isn't scheduling grueling 3-hour weekend study binges.
No one sticks to those anyway.
Nobody does. It is the architectural discipline of adapting 30-minute practice sessions into your existing daily habits.
Yeah.
Consistency beats intensity every single time. Strategy 6 is all about that routine.
The roadmap is brutally realistic about this. It doesn't pretend this is effortless. It anticipates that you are going to hit walls, specifically identifying the two universal hurdles that derail almost every adult learner: the crippling embarrassment of making mistakes and the perceived absolute lack of time.
Embarrassment and time poverty are the twin enemies of skill acquisition.
For sure.
The framework treats them not as excuses, but as logistical problems to be solved. To dismantle the embarrassment, it leans entirely on the private practice we discussed. You front-load the failure.
You fail where no one can see you.
You make your most embarrassing phonetic stumbles in front of the mirror, alone, so that when you face a real human, the structural integrity of your speech is already sound. And when you do inevitably make a mistake in public, you reframe it.
A mistake is no longer a personal indictment of your intelligence. It is simply a data point indicating a pattern you haven't fully internalized yet.
Exactly. Then there is the time poverty issue.
Everyone listening to this is stretched thin. I don't have time to learn a language.
Right. But the roadmap solution is aggressive, unapologetic multitasking. You do not wait for a magical hour of free time to appear on your calendar, because it won't.
It never does.
You layer the language over the life you are already living. You listen to the English podcast while cooking. You review your 20 daily words while on the train. You do your self-monologue while driving. You are extracting language practice from the dead space of your day.
Habit stacking.
Habit stacking is the only sustainable way to survive a 90-day sprint without burning out. You attach the new behavior language immersion to an anchored behavior you already perform daily without fail.
So what does this all mean? What is the actual tangible payoff if you manage to push through the embarrassment, audit your media diet, stack your habits, and aggressively execute this 90-day framework?
The promised return on investment is transformative. We aren't just talking about the ability to order a coffee or pass a standardized grammar test.
We're way beyond that.
The framework is designed to deliver enhanced overall communication that translates directly into professional leverage. It yields a massive, observable boost in personal confidence because you have systematically dismantled the anxiety of speaking.
You're not freezing in meetings anymore.
Not at all. Ultimately, noticeable professional-level fluency, the kind that allows you to confidently lead a meeting or negotiate a complex point in English, is absolutely achievable within 90 days if you apply these immersive strategies with rigorous dedication.
90 days to completely alter your professional landscape and communication baseline. Let's do a final sweep of the journey we've mapped out today.
Let's do.
It begins with the radical step of abandoning the grammar textbooks to avoid the conscious translation trap. You prioritize gathering high-value, environmentally relevant vocabulary, hitting that 20-word daily metric.
Right.
You transform your environment through passive absorption, switching your news, podcasts, and media entirely to English.
Media switching, yeah.
You bridge the gap to output by shadowing native speakers and enduring the initial awkwardness of self-monologues and mirror roleplay. And finally, you cement the entire structure by writing daily, creating a visual feedback loop of your own undeniable progress.
It's a holistic ecosystem. It forces the learner out of the passive role of a student memorizing lists and into the active role of an adult acquiring a vital survival tool through continuous contextual immersion.
The call to action embedded in this framework is to stop overthinking and start building the environment. Don't wait for the perfect grammar book. Implement this roadmap systematically, embrace the daily friction, and you will fundamentally rewire your English capabilities.
This raises an important question, though. When we look at the core philosophy that drives this entire approach.
Oh, I love ending on a wider lens. What is the takeaway for the listener to chew on?
Think about the premise. If language, which is arguably one of the most complex, nuanced, and neurologically demanding human skills in existence, is best acquired through this messy, immersive, childlike experience, making mistakes, talking to a mirror, experiencing the raw environment, rather than hiding behind strict clinical rule memorization, what other professional or personal skills in your life are you currently strangling with over-preparation?
Wow.
Where else in your career or personal growth are you hiding behind rules, theory, and best practices, instead of just diving into the environment, making a mess, and experiencing the actual learning process firsthand?
That is a phenomenal pivot to end on. A little deep self-reflection for your next commute, which naturally you should be doing while listening to an English broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Don't forget to check out the description for links to the free immersion resources and tools mentioned in today's source material. Until next time, keep learning and keep diving deep.